beautiful artisans on YouTube. I hope you're having a beautiful day. It's really hot and humid here today, but we have a thunderstorm coming in, so you may be hearing some thunder. I have a stack of fabrics I'm going to go through with you, and we'll talk about the shape and the sizes. I'll cut out some of the fabrics to give you an idea of how to prepare for your Kiwandi project. Now, the project that I'm working on today, I'm using a small piece. This actually measures 16 inches. It doesn't look it. I was thinking this was about 12 by 12, but it is 16, and I have two pieces. I have one that technically we're going to be calling the base, and then I have one that we're going to use as the batting. So the batting, I will be cutting the edge off here, the hem, because that's going to make it too thick and bulky all around the piece. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. But that is what we're going to do today. We're going to lay out basically the first row going around. We're going to sew it on, and we're going to lay in our batting. And then in part 3, we will continue with the rows and the sewing and complete the project. But that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to put the camera down, and we will begin to sift through our fabrics. Now, because this is a small piece, 16 by 16, I kind of want the pieces to, I want to be able to see a variety of pieces going around. So, and I also want to use cottons and linens, natural fibers if I can. If it is a blend, then I don't want a lot of spandex. So a lot of these are from fat quarters that I got at the thrift shop, or a family member gave me, or was there's like 1 or 2 that were on sale. So a lot of these were gifted to me, actually. So this measures about 2.5 by 3, and again, just like with Boro, it does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect rectangle. It doesn't have to be a perfect square, because as you go along, you might like that little slant for your design. And we overlap about, some people say a fingernail, but it's about 1/8 of an inch, I believe. That works for me. If you say a fingernail, somebody's nail might be bigger or smaller, right? But it's about 1/8 of an inch that you would overlap as you design. So, but first we'll just pick out these pieces, and I'm going to just put those to the side. Now, as I was saying in part 1, Kiwandi is also called soulful stitching. And the reason for that is as the fabrics are chosen to be part of the piece, they are chosen just not because they're matching anything. They're chosen really out of a feeling of, gee, that's the one I want, or a good vibe, or as the original Kiwandi was done in the 16th century, those pieces were chosen out of love, because they were a piece of fabric that their loved one wore. So it wasn't like I'm cutting some of these, it wasn't manipulated like that. And so that's the difference today. Now, if you have pieces and you want to do a Kiwandi piece more authentically, closer to the tradition, and you really want to get the feel for it, and you have your loved one's clothing, and you know, maybe it was clothing they wore in college or at a football game or something, and you want to do something that is a great memory for all of you. You want to make a blanket. So you go through the pieces and you cut them just like I'm doing here. You know, cut them out, get them in a pile. And then as you go through, when you start your layout and design, you're choosing whatever piece you're kind of vibed towards. Let's put it that way. That's how I think of it. So I am going to continue like this, straight through this project. And I'm going to do a few more pieces, because this is, again, cotton. And the cottons work best because you can sew through those cottons. Now, there are Kiwandi pieces that are made with long strips all the way around. And I love that. I actually, the next project I'm doing, and I'm bringing you with me along on that project, will be strips like this all the way around, because I totally love that. It's highly conceptual to me, and it brings the eye all the way around the piece, and you're looking at each piece differently because it might be not perfectly straight. It's a different texture, different color, different design. And so that's going to be the next piece. So I'm going to go around like this, and then I'll show you the stash of fabric, what it looks like at the end, and then we'll start laying out the first row. Okay, everyone, we have all our pieces cut out. These are at, I think, an appropriate size to fit on this piece, and we are ready to lay them out. Now, I'm going to put the camera down so you can see the piece, and I am going to work clockwise. And traditionally, Kiwandi is worked counterclockwise, but I am going clockwise because it's just a little easier for me. And so people have different ways. You do this piece the way that you feel most comfortable. And I will be using running stitches, but I am also going to mix it with back stitches. So just to let you know. And sometimes I just make it a little more secure. As I'm going from one piece to the next, I'll just do a back stitch, and then I'll continue with my running stitches. So typically it is done with a slow, or what they call a big stitch, or what they call a large running stitch. But each piece, each Kiwandi piece, whatever the maker, however they make it, it's their style that emanates from that piece. So the stitches can be really small, they can be medium, they can be large, whatever you are comfortable with. So prefacing that, we will begin. So I'm going to put this down, and now the first row, so this is my first piece, I am going to sew each piece on as I go on the edges. Now, some artisans will sew the entire piece on, and then they'll put the next piece on and go. Now, some artisans will fold this piece and all the pieces going along the border or the edge all the way around. So in doing that, what I'm going to do is pin that. Now, the rest of the piece will be made and designed with raw pieces. In other words, the raw edges will be showing. You will not be folding each piece on each side as you go. The only reason we are doing the fold on the hem, and you don't need to keep the hem on your piece either. The only reason I suggested these table mats or table linens is that it's a perfect square or a perfect rectangle. But you can certainly cut that hem off if you feel it might make the sewing a little, because that's kind of adding a layer, right? It's a little thick, but it doesn't bother me. I tend to get through it, and it's really only on this layer. And even when we add a backing, if you're worried about sewing through, you don't have to sew all the way through your hem. You can just sew on the top part of it. So I have a video showing you how to just sew on the top part. But anyway, so we will begin here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm starting from the inside, and I'm just going to do a few running stitches. So I'm going from the inside so you don't see the knot. And now I have that in there. I am taking my pin out. I'm keeping it folded. So I have a fold right there. And now what I'm going to do is some running stitches. My running visible stitches. And as we know, as sashiko, now the reason we are using different terminology and not calling this sashiko is there's a whole concept that goes with the use and the type of sewing that we call sashiko. And this is a running stitch that we're using in Kiwandi. So it's visible, but it's a visible running stitch. That's what this is. So we're going to continue like that. And I might turn this around so I have a little more leverage here. And we're going to do a few more pieces together. If that sways from the side a little bit, that's okay. I mean, you're going to come back up. You're going to have 1/8 of an inch overlapping here, and you're going to sew that in place. So, maybe you pin it if it keeps moving or shifting. So sometimes I find that the fabrics do shift sometimes. Sometimes they don't, they just stay right where they are. But if they're not, especially if they're not pinned, you can have that problem. Okay, now we're going to place the next piece on here. And again, I am folding it about 1/8 of an inch. I'm laying it right on the edge of my base. So it's on the edge of my base, and it's overlapping the first piece. So this is where I do a back stitch. I always end up doing a back stitch here, in between, a lot of times in between my fabrics. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to resume. I am resuming to a running stick. And I'm going to put a few more stitches in to hold this in place before I add my next fabric. So I don't know if you can hear the storm, but we have quite a storm going on here. And the reason I have the window open is because it's been extremely humid. So I'm going to tuck this underneath the computer so you can actually see this a little bit better. So getting through the hem, it's a little bit, you definitely don't want a needle with a wide eye, that's for sure. Okay, now I'm going to take another piece, and now you notice here that these are not perfectly even. Now I've heard a couple of schools of thought where if your fabrics match pretty much here, then it's easier that everything that you're sewing occurs going around. If you have a little diversion, that's not too bad. That's part of the artistic, I believe, style. So now I'm going to add this one, and I'm making sure I'm overlapping enough so it's nice and secure. Because if you're making a quilt or you're making a blanket and this is being handled a lot, you definitely want everything sewn securely. Now I was reading somewhere on the internet, someone said, oh, I don't know how this is going to behave in the washing machine. So I consider this art wear. This is made by hand. You're using fabrics that are from the thrift shop. You don't know the history, you don't know the detail even. So I think it's safer, in my opinion, to not throw a piece such as this in a washing machine. Even on a gentle load, just do a gentle hand washing and flat dry, and that way you're not stressing any of the fabrics in your piece. Okay. So now I'm going to continue like this to the end, to the corner, and when we get to the corner, I'm coming back and I'll show you how we turn the corner. Hey everyone, we made it to the corner. I have to be honest with you, I lost the video that I was working on while I was sewing the corner because of the thunderstorm, but we got through it. So I want to show you when you lay the fabric out, as you're continuing your first row, you're folding that piece of the fabric flush with the hem as you've been doing, and then when you know it's going to hit this other side, you fold that also, and then you continue your stitching. Now going to put this down. When you lay out, you're starting to lay out your design here. You certainly do have the option, if you want one piece of fabric to overlap another piece of fabric. And you can do the same thing with your design as you're going through. It does not need to overlap per se by 1/8 of an inch. With each piece, it can underlap 1/8 of an inch with each piece. So for example, let's say the next piece, I want it to underlap. So I'm going to fold my edge here and I'm going to put it underneath. So, and this is a really good choice for this because this is a bigger piece. And then, and when we get to the second row, I'll show you what your eye might want to be focusing on as you go through and lay your pieces out row by row. But for the first row, we fold our back part of it, and then we stitch. So we'll continue to stitch that. And you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, Carmella, you got a piece of that hanging over. That's okay. We're going to take another piece and we're going to overlap that. So with that doesn't show. That piece will not show. Now, if you want this to show and you want to trim that, you certainly can do that. So this is how we'll do this. But we're going piece by piece. So we'll continue this, and I'm going to continue all the way. Okay, so I ended up sewing all the way around the edge. So instead of pinning. So I'm going to put the camera down and show you how we're going to tuck the batting in. So I went and I cut the hem off of this piece because it would make it much too much bulky. And you see, now that all of our pieces are sewed, we can lift them like this with no problem. So we're going to start to put the batting. Now I'll tell you, when I learned all this, and I did this a few times, and I started to modify the way I create what I call Kiwandi Inspired, because I took parts of this beautiful design and method of creating handmade quilts, and I applied it to, I created my own method. So now this one's over a little bit, so I'm going to pull it this over here. Now, the gist of what happens for bulkiness is the Kiwandi traditionally, and they expect it, the bulkiness of the batting works its way into the center, and that is to be expected. I have never experienced a lot of bulkiness. There's maybe like one wave or fold, and it just really takes care of itself because it is being sewn in, the gathers are being sewn in as you go along. So see, now here on this side, this piece is coming up over the folds. So I'm going to pull it on the other side here. I'm going to pull it away from that. And then if it's still too large, what I'm going to do is trim it on this side. So now see, this is better. See, it's flush with your folded or sewn in pieces. So that's what you want. You don't want it, if it's bulky like that, what's going to happen is you'll have a bulge here, and that will never go away because it just is too big. That means it's just too big. So it's nice and flat over on this side. It's nice and flat here. And the other thing is, if it is just a shy too, like if you think it's a shy too small, that's probably okay all in all, because if it's close enough, I mean, batting is added to for warmth. So if it's a shy too small, that is okay. Now see how those are fitting in nice and flush with the edge here, your pieces that are sewn. got this side. You see, this is how they do. They tuck the batting in like that. So now we're going to flip all these up. Now I have seen people add the batting as they're sewing. I've seen them do that too. So there's a couple of different ways. Whatever way works best for you is the way that you want to go with that. Now see this batting, this right here that's bulky. You see the bulk? So this needs to be trimmed, this side. Just a hair, just a bit, but it needs to be trimmed. So I'm going to do that. And see, and I can see exactly what happened. When I was trimming the hem off, I missed part of it there. So it makes a difference. So I'm going to turn this way so I can cut it easier. And I'm not taking the whole thing out. I can trim it right where it's at. See better this way. There we go. This is the beauty of working with scraps is, they're just, it's, if you mess up a piece, right, you probably have another scrap piece to work with, but this is coming out beautifully. So we're going to flip all these over now. We're tucking in our batting. We're tucking it in. And we're making sure that it's flush and fitting beautifully on either side. We know that there's going to be a wave or fold or a crinkle or something that will follow us into the center. That is traditional. That is expected even in the traditional Kiwandi. So, okay, this is really nice. So, okay, we are at the end of part 2, and this is what it's looking like. I'm gonna hold this up a little bit. This is what it's looking like. Now, the next round is we need more scraps. I need to cut more scraps, and then we start row 2. We start the second row, and we go all the way around. Now, actually, it's going to be much easier. We'll be sailing through the layout and design, and the reason is now we have our batting in place. We have our first row all the way around secure, and I will bring you with me on how we do this, and you will see how easy it is to create your own Kiwandi quilt. So now this is how you do a quilt, but this is a really small piece. But if you did a quilt, if you did 35 by 40 or 40 by 40 and made a quilt like that, you would just be using larger pieces but doing the same method. So anyway, we will see you in part 3. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'm more than happy to answer.